All right, MSP here, and we're going to talk about MSP Algo Advanced Warning Pivot Points. So we had a webinar about what pivot points are, and also about what support resistance zones are. So now we're going to go just a little bit more advanced and discuss price action that may happen in the future based on our lime green resistance pivot points. So we have a lime green pivot point here. Let's do this. Okay, so we have a lime green pivot point right here, and we understand that pivot points are significant support and resistance levels. They're not lagging indicators, they're leading indicators to predict future price action. So we have the advanced warning pivot points turned on here. So they're advanced warning indicators, and these pivot points are created dynamically based on market conditions and price action. So in reality, you don't really need to draw support resistance levels on your chart, because these pivot points will detect all support and resistance levels that are being traded. It doesn't matter if it's a trend line, Fibonacci level, or just basic support and resistance levels, okay? But it is always good to draw your initial support and resistance levels at significant price points. So we already know that this was, we talked about the lime green. This is a gold pivot point, and it detects buying pressure, meaning that it detects if there's a potential opportunity for price to reverse. So we can see we get pivot points within the main ranges here of where our initial support and resistance levels were created initially. But I took those off so that we could just focus on the pivot points. So we know that was resistance, and we had some support here. So those are the significant levels. Alright, so we're specifically going to talk about the lime green pivot points and the communication that is given to the trader live in real time. So we're going to specifically talk about the step down pivot price action, and it'll predict the future price action. Okay? So what is the step down pivot? This is a step down pivot right there. So we could see that this pivot is going up. So it's considered a step up pivot. We could see that this pivot went down, okay? So what is it trying to communicate to the trader? Well, we understand that these pivots detect buying and selling pressure, but they also detect other information as well. So in this particular scenario, since we see that the trend was going up, we could see price was in an uptrend, and it did pull back, and it's trying to retest the prior pivot. But before it got there, we call it getting tagged, or the price was targeted here. So this is saying that by looking at this price action, that the market is going to create a potential accumulation zone. Okay, it hasn't been created yet. So let's do this. So we got our new pivot here. So today is the 21st. We can see it's 21st of February for our scenario here. Okay, so we see that we have a step down pivot. That's the only thing we care about right now. That is significant. We have a step down pivot. So we know it's communicating to the trader. So normally these come near accumulation zones that are going to be created, or targeting accumulation zones that were already in the past. So we don't really see an accumulation zone here. So we thinking the market's gonna create a new one. Okay. So the normal price action for this type that is the most popular, there's a few, but the number one that I noticed is, let me find my little pen here. Yeah. Okay, anyways, normally this type of price action, that's amazing. I lost my little thing I was drawing with, and I don't use it often, so okay, well, I'm just gonna have to. Okay, normally this type of price action, price will chop horizontally, and then its goal is to retest that pivot point. That's what price is gonna do. Okay, now it just depends, but the goal here is to wait for the retest. So the first thing we have is our so this is one here. We have a new step down pivot. So we know it involves accumulation or a chop zone, right? Just depends on what the market maker's intent is. But we're gonna say it's an accumulation zone. But so that is what happened. So we got our first step down pivot. So we're thinking this is gonna chop, and then its goal is to retest the lime green pivot point. So the lime green pivot point price is 93.50. We can see that over here. on the right or up near the indicators there. So normally this type price action will chop and retest. So your goal is to see how that retest go. If it starts to chop here, you want to see the retest. Normally it'll break out, and then if it failed to hold that breakout, it's going to pull back. So this type price action is normally down, chop, pop, drop. Okay, so this is the marking of a new accumulation zone or chop zone here. So that's 93.48. Okay, so let's put this near that pivot and look and see what happens. So there you see prices trying to retest, and it got tagged. So tag means that the pivot point targeted that price in that candle, and you could see a new one was created. Normally when this happens, it's a short right here, because this is the retest. This is the retest, okay? In order to succeed, here, price need to hold this level, which is at 91.45 where it was chopping. Otherwise, it's going to pull all the way back, eventually below this gold pivot or the next solid support. Okay, so we're going to go look and see what happens here. So we could see it held that chop area support, right? So the retest was a short to support. The bottom of that chop support, which is also an old pivot point, but we want to focus on current price action. So that initial was a short. Sometimes it'll pull back all the way, but you got to watch out for this area. So the pivot point came out and said, hey, remember that is support right there, and we detected buying pressure. So let's see what happens. And it breaks out, and then it retests again, and eventually pull back again. So normally this type price action, when you see it, it's gonna pull back. It's gonna pull back and chop. And it's a good opportunity to go long for long scalp, at least back to this pivot point. It just depends on the stock and how much room, if it's worth a trade. And it's going to try to break out. So that's one trade right there, just to get this pop. Now we know that we're looking to see if this get rejected. And we could see that price is starting to pull back. So we know at least this is going to go back to this pivot point or to that support area, if not lower. Okay, so in this scenario, it held its support and retested that resistance again. So and it did get tagged again, and it couldn't break out. It failed again. Okay, so that's an excellent opportunity for a short. Okay, so normally it'll pull back at least to the support, and we can see we got another pivot point. Let's just kind of push this forward quickly. So what happened? What happened here is we could see that price is starting to chop. We didn't really see any sort of accumulation or distribution zone yet, but we could kind of get an idea of where it's being created, because we got our basis here of this is probably a top or a bottom, right? Okay, So but now we see another step down pivot came. So let's see what happens if it's going to stay in sync with that sort of price action that we mentioned. They're going to try to break out there. It did break out. That did break out. And it finally got tagged, so it's going to retest the initial chop. I'm not sure what this price action is going to do. I didn't do this in advance, but I'm just basing it on pivot point bot language, okay? So normally that's what happens. So that's short, and then we see if it's going to hold that level, and we see that pivot point. So most likely it's going to retest that initial pivot point tag there. So this is telling me that this is a bullish stock, because it's not pulling back significantly, okay? So this is telling me the price action and the trades are still the same, but this is telling me that this is a bullish stock, and because it just keeps testing resistance constantly, and that's what I'm gauging out of this. Not sure what time frame this is here. Okay, let's see what the stock does, because just looking at price action, you can tell. So they're creating some sort of zone. So we kind of want to see that zone in time. We'll see it. So what I'm seeing here is there goes a box. Well, there you go. Oh, there go my brush. Okay, so we could start seeing some sort of accumulation or distribution thing here, right? So we're gonna base it from when we first saw. So there you go. So we see we got some chop. Alright, so this is like a little flush here. Okay, so we got our chop box, so it notified us that the accumulation zone is going to be created. So what does that mean? What it means is you have the benefit of, number one, knowing this stock's not going to go anywhere. Because normally as traders we think price is going to go somewhere, but we know it's not, okay? So that's advantage to the trader. And so when you're trading, you're not thinking about Microsoft at this time going to 105. You're not thinking about those things, because you know what type price action that has to happen. So you know that price has to chop in this box, right? And we got our box drawn. So all we expect price to do is go up and down in this box. So that's the price action that you should be playing here. Okay, let's go in and run this thing and see what happened in time. Okay, so it did detect an accumulation zone, and price action did predicted the pivot points, the step down pivots, predicted future price action for a period of time between 228 until this breakout 5-9. So that's what I see traders. It seems like when I say play chop, they keep asking for updates, like on Tesla, and there are no updates. It's chop. Do you understand? You understand what support and resistance is now, okay? So that's all you could do. The price action will tell you when it's ready to make that move. Price action will tell us when it's ready to make a move, right? Because we'll start seeing extremes. And so we know that's an accumulation zone already before it was created. So in the meantime, you just play your chart. That's all you could do. You're not caring about where price is going. Most traders thinking about 115, or they see it dropping, they're thinking about 80. You're not. You're making maximum profits by knowing the chop zone and what the market maker's doing before the market maker did it. There's nothing like this anywhere. The most advanced warning trading system on the planet. And so that is a nutshell about these step down zones. So I'm gonna go over another video about these pivot points, but in the meantime, subscribe, like, and wait for the next video on the secret bot trading language being communicated to the trader so they can win, and win big.